All right, for our featured guest today, we have Eddie Leverett from Las Vegas. Eddie and his wife Julie started the company 111 Ltd, which I'm really excited to hear this story because I've connected with them on Instagram for a number of years now. Got to meet up with them down at the Builders Show in Las Vegas this year. And then I'm just impressed with what they're doing. They do a lot of remodeling with a focus on design to meet the needs of the people, exactly what they need in their home. And so I'm just super excited to have you on the show today, Eddie. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Eddie, let's let's go back. And I'd like you just to tell us your story. How did you get to where you're at today?
So it is, the story goes back quite a ways. I'm a third generation contractor in my family. So, my grandpa worked in construction and my dad worked in construction. So I was kind of just, lived my whole life around it. I actually started going to jobs with my dad in the summers as early as kindergarten. And my first job was spotting nails with a 6-inch knife and a mud pan. Later I wonder like what the guys thought of having to clean up after me because there's no telling how I finished. But, I spent my summers doing that, just seeing what went on. And it was always, as a kid, it's neat to see, the equipment, something being built. And it's even to, I take my grandson on the job now and it's just, he has such a great time.
Yeah.
If it's a demo day, I'll get him a hammer and a hard hat and he'll just go out there and just do what he wants to do. And I was able to do that as a kid. And it kind of, I was able to be with my grandpa and my dad, more often than not, just because, our industry allowed that. And he owned the business. So it was, it wasn't an office job or somewhere where he couldn't take me. I was able to spend a good majority of time.
Yeah. Were you guys
Around
in
the
Las Vegas at that time?
No, no. I was born in California. A majority of my life spent there. When I started working with my dad, he was in Colorado at the time. It seems Colorado and California's economic cycles are kind of opposite. So for whatever reason, when we were young, if California was kind of down, we seemed to be in Colorado because it just, for whatever reason, it wasn't affected as bad as California. So at that time, we were in Colorado, and then I think by third grade, I moved back to California. And then by then, the summers, I would still go and just, eventually get to do more and more on the sites.
Was your
As I got,
grandpa and your dad remodelers like you, or more home builders, or what?
my dad started out as a steel stud framing and drywall contractor and painting. So he had a company called Key Drywall in Colorado, and he first went to work for a company that was, I guess, kind of on the outs, or the owner was thinking of retiring or whatever, and him and another guy just kind of bought the company and took over. And he started as, doing tenant improvements. He did some of the malls out there, and was more on the commercial side than the residential side. So that's where I was able to just kind of just do a lot of commercial back then. My grandpa is a different story and a unique story. My grandpa was a child of the Depression, and unfortunately for him, he, I think second or third grade, he had to quit school and start to work to help support the family. So he wasn't able to read or write, those kind of things. But he had a work ethic that was hands down. When I hear the stories of how he had to work, the conditions he had to work is, unreal to hear at certain times now, and it just wouldn't fly in today's society. But not being able to read or write, he went into the construction field just because, it was, I guess, simple to get into. He was
Yeah.
a heavy equipment operator and a plumber. And I think back, and he worked all over Southern California. And just to think that, now we have phones and maps and things to get around. My grandpa couldn't read, so he'd have to look at directions and make sure, well, all the letters on this match what's on the sign, and
Oh, wow.
what a struggle it was to work. And he did that, married, took care of a household, raised three kids, and it's he for me defines the term. And it's funny with, Sean Van Dyke talking about the college education and the and our field. My grandpa defines the term for me: ambition trumps education every time, because I see my grandpa as a super successful person, and he couldn't read or write, but he had the common sense and the ethic to just do whatever it took to do better for him and his family. So it was just kind of, that was instilled in my dad, and then through him instilled in me. And so then, my dad, once we came back to from there, my dad came back to California, still more of a commercial side contractor, and then started doing, through some developers, I think, did like custom homes and things like that on a residential side. And then by that time I was in, junior high or so, and I'd work the summers still. I raced motocross back then when I was younger. So I'd work the summers just to support, racing motocross. And homes were neat. The one thing that I noticed quickly between working on a commercial site and working on a home site is that homeowners, you get a better appreciation working for a homeowner and someone's home than in the commercial. You also didn't have a tendency to chase money for long periods of time, which was a little bit less stressful. It seemed a little more competitive on the residential side, but a lot more appreciation when everything was done. So that was, did that through all the years of high school. Once I got out of high school, just kind of started, working with my dad, full time. And I started just doing steel stud framing and drywall. When you're young, it's hard work, and you kind of, that was the 90s. So that was when there was a push to really just go to school and do something different. So with that in the back of your mind, you sometimes think that that's what you need to do. And
For
like,
sure.
I don't think I need to do drywall or steel stud framing or things like that. And
I remember that push.
yeah, and so there was a lot of outside influences, not necessarily my parents, but just society being like, you know what, you need a degree, a bachelor's or a AA or certain things like that. And I just went on working years and years, and eventually on the residential side, they're just through experience. There was a lot of, my dad would do homes, custom homes or renovations that, you'd have an architect that would work with a homeowner, that would work with a structural engineer, that would work with, then the contractor. So there were all of these hands in on this project. And there'd always be an issue that would come up like, oh, well, what, we got to get back to the architect to revise this, or, this isn't working in the field, looks great on paper, this or that. So at some point in the early 90s, I just decided, well, if I'm going to go back to school, I might as well do something that I'm pretty familiar with. So I did go back to school to become an architect.
Oh, wow.
So, I still worked during the day and just did all my schooling at night. But what I wanted to accomplish was just being able to, when somebody had a home that they wanted, whether it's custom or a renovation or something like that, I just wanted to be able to, one, I like to design, so I wanted to have that opportunity to design. But then by that point, I had the experience, especially in a renovation. I had the knowledge of it, because it's not if something's going to happen, it's when something's going to happen or when you're going to find something. And just knowing in the design aspect that those things are possible, I could kind of have ways around them. Or if we wanted to do something, I just knew that, hey, we better do some forensic investigation and kind of see like how this building's built, what they did. If we don't have as-built or something like that, we better make sure that on the front end that we have everything in line. So once we break ground, that we don't have any roadblocks in our way, and try to eliminate the potential for them from the get-go, and just being able to design and build and have the one point of contact is nice, because with architects are busy and they do their thing, but we would get into renovations and you'd have an issue with how the structure was built and having to get something revised, and sometimes you were waiting like 2 weeks to get a revision, or even longer sometimes, and that's to get your revised drawings and then have to submit and stuff like that. So we're just losing a lot of time, to where it was even getting to a point where I would draft stuff for the architect and just say, hey, can you sign this and do whatever? But that was still a challenge to, and time on our side to just chase down and get that done, to where now when we can do all that in-house, it just benefits a lot of people. And, one of the big things too back then was, if they specify certain things, they may specify something that they saw or came across, that even though that it's out there, our ability to get it to us, whether it came from another country or something like that, was just always an issue. So we're also careful to, when we do design, that we make sure that we can source all our products easily and efficiently, because it's not good to go into construction hoping that you can get something and then find out, well, you know what? Yeah, we have all our prototypes, but we've never really actually produced anything. So now we have an issue, where that's just one of the other things from experience we know to get a grasp on early on. So then I went back to school. I was still racing at the time. And then in '99, I had an accident and broke my legs. Up until that point, I was just working with my dad, and if I did any other jobs, it was kind of like I'd use his license or whatever. And since we have the same name, his name's Eddie Leverett too, it was just kind of one of those things that I wasn't right, but I did it, just to work or whatever. So I ended up in '99 breaking both my legs. And
so was that a motocross accident?
Yeah. It was. I was at a track and just had a little mishap and ended up, changing my life that day. That was the first of two. That one was kind of serious, not super serious, but I was out for quite a while in a wheelchair, and so at that time, since I had the time and couldn't work in the field, I did go and get my contractor's license then. So I was able to do that. And when I did come home from the hospital, it was one of the first times that you realize, wow, my house didn't work for me, like door opening sizes.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, a 28-inch door is like nice, but now the axle bolts on my wheelchair are scratching my door stops or hitting, or certain things like that. Just a lot of issues related to being in a chair that I kind of, you've been aware of, because in motocross, I do have a lot of friends in wheelchairs, but it's like, and you can sympathize and be like, oh, wow, that is tough. And even in school, we'd have a day just for our ADA compliances. It'd be like our classroom would have a wheelchair and a student would sit, function for a day or two in a wheelchair. But I think being in the mindset that you're going to get out in 2 days, I don't think you digest everything as much. But when you're in a wheelchair for months, and then even struggling with a walker or whatever to recover, you get a different mindset, and you realize, and it sticks with you better. And it's, with that being said, it's like I didn't plan on coming home or living my life like that. And since then, we've come across other people that, whether it's a neurological disease or an accident or something that limits their mobility, they're all of a sudden, they find themselves, wow, my house doesn't work. I need this, I need that. And, we incorporate it, even if they don't need it. We try to accommodate that in a simple term. We just usually don't put any door less than 32 inches, just because, a 2.0 door doesn't make sense if someone comes in and it seems a little bit discriminatory if you have such a small door that whether it's an aging parent with a walker that can't get through or some other sort of thing. It's simple to design that way.
So are you
You
saying
know,
that if you're designing a home,
mhm.
especially like you do remodels and renovations, even if the customer hasn't said we have handicap issues and we want you to design around that, even if there is none of that in their family, you're still thinking that, right?
Yeah, yes,
Because
yes,
something could happen in the future, or they're going to have aging family that may live with them part of the time, and so if it makes sense to have, I mean, if there's room
yeah.
to add an opening, then you're going to do it
Yeah.
just because you're
And,
thinking that way.
and that's what being part of the design, whether they need it or not, we're conscious that what we don't want to go a smaller door than a 32-inch door because we know a wheelchair will fit through there. If someone's like, well, we want the extra 6 inches and we'll put a 2.0 door, it's
Right.
like, we just really advise against certain things like that. If it is, a nice modern type home, we try to just really push like floating vanities and kitchen layouts that will work for anyone because, I've functioned in a kitchen in a wheelchair and I know that they can be made to accommodate, both all abilities. It's just you have to strategically place and set things up. Clearances, like we'll have customers want to fit a whole bunch of stuff into a kitchen and say, well, I think 36 inches from my sink to my island is fine. And, we'll just really push, for 42 or 48 is just, you'll thank me later. And it's just a lot of little simple things like that that go a long ways when somebody needs it. And they may not ever need it, but if it ever arises, then they'll appreciate it. And it didn't take a lot to try to push for that. In fact, when I was in school, and the term is universal design, there was a handful of students that thought that we really should push for track home builders to have certain standards, be held to the standards that the commercial and public side are in their residential homes, because when you are in a typical track home, if you have to come home in a wheelchair or some sort of thing, you're in trouble in a lot of ways just because so many things don't work. So we really do try to incorporate that wherever we can, and most people really do appreciate it, especially because there are a lot of parents that are coming back to live with their kids or that need care and be able to move around. So it is just a good selling point for us that we do think along those lines. We don't want the house to discriminate against anyone based on their ability.
Mm-hmm.
So we make sure that we try to address everything that we can.
So this came out of your first accident. You're wheeling around in a wheelchair. I picture you at a quite a bit younger age. And then,
Yeah,
like, did you go on and you said you got your contractor license at that point,
yeah,
started your own business doing
yeah.
design, or were you doing some other at the
So
same
so at the
time?
time, so at that time we were still doing a lot of building and remodeling. Slowly, we were able to incorporate us doing all of our own plan sets and everything like that. So from that point, we did start doing all of our. We would still work with architects and designers, but we preferred to be a one point of contact. It was later. Once you build a reputation, then you can hold yourself and say, hey, you know what? We offer this as a package and we kind of don't work otherwise. That way we're all inclusive. Communication with the homeowner is just one person,
Is that
but
because you can make more money, or you like to have complete control over the project? What's some of your reasoning of wanting to keep it in house like that?
uh, it's not so much more money because really I think sometimes we find ourselves on the planning end and front end. We do charge for that and but I think just being good-hearted and good-natured, we go above and beyond on the design part and our interaction with the homeowner on the front. We just like to make sure that there's no buyer's remorse when they're done. So I think, and just knowing that also we work closely with all of our trades exclusively almost. So we have a mindset of we know how our trades work, what they do, what they want the jobs to look like, what design's better for them. So when we do design, I in the back of my mind, I'm paying attention like where the HVAC guy is going to run his duct work. I'm paying attention where my plumber is going to run his vents, where the electricians are going to run their things. And then especially, with electrical and then low voltage and data, we want to make sure that we keep those things separate. So I'm conscious of those things. So it just kind of works nice because by the time we start construction, I've built that house in my head and on paper so many times that by the time we get the ball rolling, barring any major mishap, we're pretty smooth. And the other thing, just being the racer side of me, like just being in town, I do like if there's another renovation or something happening around the corner, it is in the back of my mind that, I want to finish that faster and better than the other person. So we can say if we do all that planning up front, even though the homeowners are like, why does this take so, why are we doing this and why are we doing that? I said, you know what, when we start disrupting your house and you want us to finish, then you'll realize how important this was on the front end. Because then we can kind of go without, a lot of hiccups. And that's going to the point to where, when we're on the design side, if they go to an architect, they're going to get 2D, two-dimensional drawings. They're going to get two-dimensional, elevations and stuff like that. We go to the extent to where we 3D render things so we can get a good sense of how things are going to work. If they do change something drastically, and this is something that I learned in school, and it goes a long way with design. If they're kind of like on the fence with a certain part of the house or something like that, or a way a wall is going to change, we'll tape out things in the house. Like say someone wants to put an island in their kitchen and the space is limited, we'll tape it out on the floor and say, live with this for 2 weeks, walk around it, don't step over it, and see if this works.
Yeah.
So, it's.
So tell me the story of 111. Where did that name come from, and when did you and how did you start that business?
So I was in California for 20 years working and living my life around. And so me and Julie knew each other. We went to school together.
Okay.
And then, when we were young, kind of just went our separate ways. And then a handful of years ago, later in life, we crossed paths and got together. It was kind of a long distance relationship. She lived in Vegas and I was still in California. And going back and forth, in 2014, we had a mutual friend that got diagnosed with MSA, which is a neurological disease that slowly affects your mobility. And not only mobility, but a lot of motor functions like speech and certain things like that, a pretty dreaded disease. So he was diagnosed with that. Just by chance, it was like a weird thing. He happened to follow my social media also, but 2 and 2 weren't put together at that point. And he kind of liked the designs that we had and liked that I had an emphasis on universal design and making it aesthetically pleasing. So I came out and consulted with him to renovate his house because he knew down the road, and it was going to be soon, that he was going to lose his ability to walk, eventually lose his ability to use his hands, and eventually, it was a fatal disease, and with like a 2 to 5 year lifespan. He had a nice house, he entertained people, and one of the things that he liked, and one of the things that I believe when you do have a disability or an injury, I think if your house tends to look more institutional or doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, I think that messes with your head, which eventually messes with your ability to recover and keep a positive mindset to recover. Because, my second injury was far worse, to the point of the first hospital I was transferred to were going to amputate my legs. And luckily I was transferred to UCSD in San Diego, and some doctors there thought, well, we could try a few things if you're up for it. It's kind of a pioneering thing, but we think that we can save your legs. So I'm like, whatever you can do to save my legs and just stand on my own 2 feet again, I'll do anything. And after that, being through it before, I knew I would have to gear myself up for a long recovery, and a positive state of mind, whether it was my surroundings, the people around me, that was important. And that's one of the things with universal design. People will look at some of them and they won't know that it's designed for someone in a wheelchair or limited abilities or certain things like that. We just try to make it look, we don't want it to look institutional or like a hospital. We want it to where no matter what their abilities, they're proud of it.
I love this.
Yeah. But so then, so I went through that, my first injury, my second injury, still in California. So then with our mutual friend, I came out, consulted with him. He still wanted to be able to entertain and enjoy his house and be proud of his house. So he was going to go away for a while for some research. So we planned his house. When he was gone, we went in and renovated it while he was gone. And when he came back to a completely new home that accommodated him 100%. Not only him, I never really had caregivers, but caregivers are one that you kind of need to think of them as well. So we did kind of cater it to where, we made sure we had room for caregivers in the shower and certain things like that. So, we finished that. He came back and then, at the time, that was 2014, the economy was slowly picking up again, or, it was on the recovery side. California was still lagging a little bit, and I was kind of at a point where, well, I can be either way. California was, I can make it there, or I could come here and try to make a new start as well. So I came out here, and just after that, I think just through word of mouth and just being, seen as a responsible contractor, we've been busy since. So after Carrie's house was, Julie had worked for Carrie for a long time, and as the disease progressed, she took the role of being a caregiver for him. One, because he was going to lose his ability to speak, and really just hiring someone that you didn't know and didn't know him kind of didn't make sense. So, she stepped away from her position and became a caregiver for him. And, it was a long, for 2 years, it was just, a whole different ball game for both of us. He ended up passing away, and afterwards we're like, well, you know what, she was now, left her original job. Now he was gone. She didn't really have anything to do. And, I was new here still. And it's like, well, you know what, let's now just start a company here and really push, for the ideals that we believe in is a home that's just really, really everything it can be to its homeowner on all aspects. So, we decided to start 111, and, we played around for a few weeks with names here and there and just was going nowhere. So then to the 111 name, and going back to, we were friends in high school and crossing paths later and getting together and getting married. There was I've always been a U2 fan, and back in 1987 they had a movie, Rattle and Hum, and when they sing the song With or Without You, they add the lyrics at the end, one heart, one hope, one love. So that's 111. So then we've just always like had the term, one heart, one hope, love, 111, 111, 111. And it was just kind of a thing between us, you know, just that one heart, one hope, one love. But then it also turns out that in like whether it's an angel number or numerology or something, when you see numbers in sequence, like kind of like how if you make a wish at 1111 or certain things like that, 111 and numbers in sequences of three are, and if you see them often in those realms, are a symbol that you're manifesting your own destiny and you're on the right path. And it also indicates that you should take your knowledge and experiences and share them with others. So then it's kind of like, well, wow, that's really, it's funny that that came up because we are now wanting, in honor of our friend to kind of just really push this and make it all it can be to where anything we build is all inclusive to anybody, regardless of what their deal is, and just make it as nice as possible.
Yeah, and you shared with me before we started recording that you have this desire to share your knowledge with the next generation.
Yeah.
And keep,
Yeah.
You know.
And that's one of the things that's great, because when the there's such a wide spectrum and a wide variety of people to follow and kind of talk with and do whatever. When I was young, I didn't really have that. So even when it goes back to following the white collar path, it's like, well, you know what? I just had basically TV and radio kind of to say, you know what, let's push this and do this. And other than my dad and grandpa saying, well, no, you know what, it's not, I don't think you need to be ashamed of anything or whatever, and my grandpa obviously made a living and a career out of it, and my dad did the same thing. And for whatever reason, there was a push thinking that if you work in the construction field, you're just never going to amount to anything. To where now it's easy to get the support and be a part of something and not feel like you're on the outskirts of anything, even when it comes to just whether it's trade secrets or things like that. There's just so much to help with anyone, a new contractor, old contractor, because I even tell our guys, and it's funny because and when we get to the technology part of what we use as far as the podcast, we have an iPad on the job, and it's, it has cellular data, so they can, through their Bluetooth speaker, they can play the podcasts or whatever they need. And we tell the guys, I've been in this for so long, but I'm still learning things. Or, whether it's basically the same thing, but a different way to do it, or a more efficient way to do it, or something that helps me, we kind of encourage that, if you really want to be. And our guys are all for it. We're careful with, how we hire and who we choose to work with, and they're all up for being, the best they can be, and podcasts and listening to those things are all part of.
I think it's awesome that you're doing that, and it was really fun for me to get a chance to meet you down there at the show, and then see you, with your guys all around you and taking them all around, and just helping them further their own. Like, basically what you were doing is saying, look, guys, this is what we're a part of, this huge industry, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is awesome. But Eddie, I'm wondering, what do you wish you knew back when you started your business that you know now?
So one of the things that like goes back to planning and everything when I was younger, and it also goes back to the commercial side of doing the work, and like seeing my dad do a lot of commercial work, and you'd have, performance dates you had to meet, and deadlines that were critical, and everything was just push. But then through that push, you also saw a lot of overstepping and mistakes and things like that. And it was also kind of, there were a couple of times in a commercial career and talking through other developers and things, just not as friends, but how their business models were. I was open, my eyes were open to some developers and some big contractors, almost like predators. Because I had a friend that had a contractor school in California, and there's a lot of developers or bigger contractors that would solicit bids from people who just got their license. And the intent was, if you can push them and they're brand new, you can push them into mistakes, and their contracts and their bids would have mistakes, and then you would capitalize and hold them to it. And I started seeing, not only that, my eyes were open to that. Another builder, and they went out of business, but they also had like a full-time plan checker that would find discrepancies in the plan and use those to their advantage against contractors. So it was like, wow, that's just a big business that, I don't want to be a part of, and I don't want to be pushed into making a mistake. And if someone's like down my throat, get me something, get me something, get me something. I want to be fast, but I want to be accurate too.
Sure.
I don't want to be pressured into like overlooking something. So
Exactly.
it is one, I wish when I was younger, I did kind of, you think you're ambitious, but you also have a feeling that you need to accept every job or everyone that wants to work with you. And sometimes you're just either pushed too quickly, or they want things too quickly, or, to where I think you really got to be very calculated, still quick and in a timely manner, but you got to have the ability and the time to be calculated in what you're doing, and what you're offering, and what you're going to present.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the things, that I do wish I knew when I was, or that I just had patience and things when I was younger. And
Or
also,
even within that is that thing of knowing when you can say no.
yeah,
Right?
that's huge.
Knowing
Yeah.
this project is not going to allow me enough time that I really want to have, or in my gut it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So I'll just say no and go on to the next one.
Yeah. And then that's tough, especially when you're new and when you're young.
Exactly.
And it's because, like, especially with the guys that, just got their license, it's like, well, I've worked for someone for so long now, everything, this all weighs on me, and I just better make sure that I don't have any slow time or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, but sometimes that slow time is better than having a job that you're losing on,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're committed to finishing at your own expense. So it's just good to be careful, calculated, and make sure you have the time to do things correctly.
Would you say sleep on it? Give it another day or whatever, just to let your mind
Yeah.
even while you're asleep, sometimes we process stuff and wake up maybe with a little bit different. Like I have one of my sons is still pretty young, and he just thinks he has to have this certain thing for sale, and it's going to take up a lot of his money. And I'm just like, you know what? We'll give it a little bit of time. It'll, those opportunities will be there in the future, and just give it a little bit of time and see, a few weeks or even a couple months, and see how you feel after you've given it some time.
Yeah. Impulse purchases or impulse decisions can sometimes, they can be either way. You just want to make sure that they're on the good side of that impulse and not the bad. And if there is like a little bit of a hesitation, then, it's good to think about it. And even so, with the process of design and not rushing, there are a lot of things with our customers to where, like, well, you know what, we'll mark something out here, like with the blue tape. Take your time to think about it, because we don't want, when we're all said and done, these walls and all of these cabinets or whatever's going in here is going to be permanently affixed, and you don't want any remorse when it's done, going, oh, I should have did this and I should have did that, and certain things. So, but it takes time to do that.
Yeah.
And then, when you do that, once you execute the project, then, for us, we're better off when we do that like that.
Yeah. What do you contribute or attribute your success?
I think just it's I think something you just have to have, just wanting the will to be successful, because there are a lot, our industry is feast or famine, up or down, and there's a lot of times where you think, well, wow, it might be easier to just work for somebody or take that other
Yeah.
path, but for whatever reason, whether it was just being surrounded, by my dad being a business owner, my grandpa working hard, and all of those things, I just have it in me to just want to move ahead. And and I think from a kid that was just instilled in me from my parents, and
Hmm.
just wanting to just prove to myself that I can do it. It's not the notoriety or the popularity. It's just knowing that I've moved forward, I've executed, and I've presented and finished what I promised I would to somebody.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And
And
there's a great feeling to that, because even going back to thinking that you should just go to work for someone and it's kind of just an even plane, there's security and everything like that. You do take the risk of a business owner, but even if you don't make a ton of money or anything like that, there's a lot of satisfaction in knowing that you changed someone's house, which changed their life. And that goes a lot farther than the dollar that you earned. The dollar that you earned is going to be spent and gone. But when like if I look back on some customers and know that just, man, they've created some great memories in that house. It functions for them. It's everything that they wanted. It's not what a tract home builder offered. It's, we went in and renovated that house for everything, with everything that they wanted, and now they have 5-10 years of memories that are just great. And we continue to stay in touch with our customers, whether
hmm,
I did their house 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and it's just, you can't, it's hard to beat that feeling, and that goes a long way. And every time we engage in something, that's what we shoot for,
yeah.
is that.
And when you're just getting started, you don't have all those stories to draw strength from. And so, what is it that you hold on to keep pressing when the going gets tough?
Yeah, I think it's just almost putting blinders on, and if you have your vision and what you want to do, just don't let outside influences, you know, push you in other directions. And that's the nice thing about with social media and the group of people and the followings that everyone have. It's just kind of nice to be able to look to someone or direct message someone or talk to someone and say, hey, you know what, I'm feeling this right now, or I have this, that I got this bridge I got to cross. What do you think? And kind of whatever. When you're on your own going into uncharted territory, it's a little bit tougher. But when you do have the support, like luckily for me, I did have my dad to just really help me a lot
Yeah.
and go back to. And even to this
Yeah.
day, I call him often
Yeah.
with, like, what do you think? What's your
Yep.
experience? Because every experience is different. And just when you think you've experienced everyone that could ever happen, then something different happens. And
Hmm. And even
so
if
it
there's no answer, it's nice to have someone to listen to, huh? Or
yeah,
listen to
yeah,
you during that time.
yeah, because it's just, you just have to have the courage to, and the strength to just step forward, and the rewards are huge.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, because especially when you're young, you don't always make a lot of money. You make mistakes and you lose money. You finish the job, you move on to the next, and eventually you just get a grasp of what's going on. But even if you did lose money, and that goes back to where just the feeling of knowing you accomplished something
Yeah.
for somebody, that goes a long ways. And then, once that's ironed out and done, then the ball starts rolling, and things start coming around, and it does take a while, especially too, because contractors in a lot of ways have a bad rap. I mean, we're always hearing stories. Yeah, well, he took a deposit and ran, or this, or there's always something. So not only do you have your own deal that you have to push through, you have to, go through all that. It's like fighting an uphill battle, but eventually it comes around, and when you put your due time and your reputation's built, then it just pays dividends, almost like, it's just in a residual effect.
Eddie, from your perspective, where you sit right now, as you look at our industry as a whole, how do you feel about it?
Good. I like that. It's, I try to think it seems, it's growing. There's a lot of popularity to it, which is nice. It seems that I do like that there is a push, like, what, it is a trade that you can go into, be proud of, and those kind of things, where like a majority of my younger career wasn't like that. It was like, oh, here comes a dirty plumber, or here comes this or that. But now it's like, no, here comes a knowledgeable tradesman, and a respectful person, and an honest person. And it that wave and that change is nice to see. And then just even moving forward, it seems, with that being said, it's kind of, better in the sense that more people are going to contractors for all inclusive contracts and builds, rather than, when contractors really got a bad rap, like in the late 90s or early 2000s, where it seemed like every contractor was a crook or something. Most homeowners would want to act as their own contractor and be like, well, I'll hire this person, and do all this. The job might take a year or 3 times as long, but at least I have, better control, and I can trust what I'm doing. To where now it's kind of, the tide's changed, and now it's, not that it's been totally disrespected in the past, but
Right.
There's just a new wave of like, hey, there's knowledge there. And like, you said earlier, building's not going away.
Yeah.
Someone has to do it, and someone has to be, you need competent people, creative thinkers, quick thinkers, and just people that can act on what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. I love that. When you were disabled, you probably saw a few specialists, right? People who specialize in broken bones or whatever. And that's what I want to see. I want to see our industry filled with specialists. And I don't necessarily mean the way that sounds, specialty trade, but rather I want homeowners to view a contractor coming on the scene as a specialist. Like, I can trust this guy, or gal. This business, they are professional. They know what they're doing, and they may not know what's behind the wall, but they know how to figure it out. And I'm going to leave all of that to them, because they're a specialist and I'm not.
Yeah.
And the DIY community is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to contractors and in this industry as a whole, that's what I want to see. I want to see business owners like us. I want to see embrace that and say, we are going to be professionals and we're going to make a difference because we're professional and this is our specialty. We're not just trying to put bread on the table and make a living and that's it. No, this is an industry to be proud of.
Yeah, and that's what when we engage with a customer and on our first consultations, we do kind of explain a lot. Going to the term specialist is that all of us really are. when we go to a customer and we tell them about us and what we offer, one, we're offering a service, we're offering a lot of experience,
Mm-hmm.
and with that experience is just we bring to the table years of building things. We bring the knowledge of code, building standards, things like that. Because, fortunately for me, when I was in school, there was a time period where I got to do forensic investigations for the construction industry. So that was, an eye-opening thing as well. Just being in being in with a bunch of homes that were basically toxic or malfunctioning and things like that. So, when we offer our service, we're bringing knowledge that a home, if it's built wrong, can be detrimental to a homeowner's safety or health or things like that. One of the biggest challenges I had back in California was going into a house after a contractor had renovated it, and the previous homeowner boasted about how great it was and how cheap he got it done and everything like that. Fast forward a little while, he fixed the house. The remodel was done to sell the house, and this was a $2 million home.
Wow.
On the coast in Del Mar in San Diego, and so the new homeowners moved in. Well, back to the previous owner, for whatever reason, they fixed the house and then decided to sell it. His wife started getting sick, and then they'd go out to their Palm Springs home. She'd start to feel better, come back to the coast. She'd feel sick again, go back to Palm Springs. So they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's just the coast and the moist weather. Maybe she just needs dry weather and she'll be better. So they sold the house. The new homeowners got it. They started to experience like weird things. One, the moisture in the house was beyond what it should be in a home, and there were other weird smells and other certain like breathing effects and weird things going on. So they had called a couple of contractors that said, hey, you know what, you live on the coast in San Diego. This is kind of how the houses are. They're weird. Put a bunch of damp red boxes around and try to take the moisture out or put a dehumidifier in or whatever. And somehow one of the homeowners' co-workers was married to a plumber that I had used for years, and they were not a co-worker, a industry person that kind of knew them, and they were talking one day, and my plumber overheard what they were saying. I said, hey, you know what, if you have a problem with the house, you need to call Eddie, this guy Eddie, and have him come look, because if there's anyone out there that knows if something's going on, he'll know what's going on. So they called me and we went and looked at the house, and I told him, I said, you know what, there's something to be said about humidity and certain things like that, but I think something might be wrong with this house, but unfortunately I'd have to do quite an intrusive investigation to find out what's going wrong. And he says, well, you know what, we're thinking maybe we should do that. So to try to get through this quickly, we did do the investigation on the house. We found out that part of the house that had an addition into the hillside, they put their block retaining wall for the basement part. They didn't waterproof any of it. They ran their gas lines through the crawl space. They used the wrong steel. They didn't strap it. That gas line had sagged enough to make contact with the dirt, so it had rusted, and there was just a pinhole natural gas leak there. When they renovated the kitchen, they dropped the ductwork into the crawl space, never capped it. A rat had eventually chewed through the outside wall and got into the ductwork of the house. And this is like a worst case. This is the worst house that I've ever seen. But the rats eventually infested that whole HVAC system. They renovated the kitchens and the bathrooms. When they relocated all of the plumbing, they never ran their vent stacks back up through the roof. So sewer gas was going into the wall cavities. And we discovered all of this while they were living in it. And it was like, well, now, I said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but now that I've exposed all this, I can't here's what I need to do to move forward. So you either have to move out of the house or do something or accept that we need to move forward. So we quickly moved forward and in a matter of, tried to quickly redesign the house. We ended up stripping it down to the studs and rebuilding the whole thing. But it was just, I've never experienced so many shortcuts from a shoddy contractor in one house. It was just, and I believe that was what led to the previous owner's wife's illness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was starting to affect the respiratory systems of the homeowners that were in it then. So it's like, we bring a not only knowledge of how things aren't done, but we also bring the character and the goodwill not to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And whether, even, and that goes along with the trades that we bring in, we know that they're not going to do that. And that goes a long ways, because, that guy spent, even if it was cheaper than a lot of contractors, he still spent a lot of money on something that eventually, compromised their health and safety. So it is, that's what a contractor with experience brings to the table.
Eddie, unfortunately, we are bumping up against time here, and so
Okay.
I'm looking at this last question, but also the question that I didn't have a chance to ask yet, which is, what is the best advice you've ever been given? And then the last question is, what would you tell a young contractor who's just getting started? And I wondered, could you combine those two? What's the best advice you've ever been given, and what would you tell a young contractor who's just getting started?
So I think the best advice is just, everything you do with integrity, and that goes along the lines of just whether you're being watched or whatever. And this goes to the line that I always get excited if I get to use on the job site with someone. So when I was young, if you're trying to just work and do something, you have a tendency to be like, oh, it'll get covered up, no one will see it, or just this or that. And it's like, oh, it's okay. Well, my grandpa would always say, he'd grab me by the collar and say, hey, boy, no one ever sees your ass. Does that mean you don't wipe it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's integrity, doing something that needs to be done when no one's watching. And because it is, if you have 10 trades coming into the house, each one's going to be like, oh, well, the next guy can correct it or whatever, and we're adamant with our guys, go, you know what, think about the next guy, think about the guy after that, and think about the guy after that. And with that, just, someone new coming into the trade, take a good look at that and just don't focus on whether you're a trade contractor or a general. Don't just focus on your immediate thing. Think of the next guy. If you're the framer, make sure you're shimming and shaving the walls, so when the tile guy comes in, he has a good platform to work on, and just think of that along the way. That way, when it's all said and done, hopefully you're in a good situation, and you're recognized as part of that whole package that gave all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's really good, because it's so easy to just do our thing, right?
Yeah.
Think of it as a job. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
But you're raising the bar and saying, no, you're part of a bigger picture here. Keep that in mind and do your best at what you do to make the finished project something everyone's excited about and proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know time's quick, but just real quick with the technology, because we did, wanted to give a shout out to, Builder Trend. We use Builder Trend. They're great for us. The guys use it. Our subs use it. We use Google Docs. Help us a lot. One of the things that help us keep pace if we didn't have technology was we have, our iPad Pros that with, sharing apps between all of our guys. We have a job site iPad that has, Builder Trend and the ability to just look up everything. Our focus is to go paperless with that kind of thing. We design and build in Chief Architect and AutoCAD. We have the big thing with the iPad too is that we're able to FaceTime customers and our tradespeople wherever we are to resolve issues quickly.
That's cool.
So it is
the difference between Chief Architect and AutoCAD. Why, as a designer, why are you using both?
So with AutoCAD, I was kind of born and raised and through school used AutoCAD. So we do all our, like, a lot of 2-dimensional work with that. And like if I have to do a drawing for, say, a hidden door or something, and I have to mock up hinges and make sure my clearance and run through the motions, I do that in AutoCAD, and we'll do details too. But then we'll do our all of our plans in Chief Architect, and with that, we can build and do our 3D renderings and our elevations, and we can kind of walk the customer through our renovation and their finished home.
Chief Architect isn't as powerful as AutoCAD when it comes to that.
Well, the AutoCAD I have is just a 2-dimensional. I have AutoCAD LT, so it's just 2-dimensional.
But you're so familiar with it, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I can work a little bit quicker when I'm just doing line or certain things. But then with Chief Architect, it allows you to, build your wall, build it as it's going to be built, and do your 3D renderings. So it works out pretty nice. And AutoCAD, Revit is the similar to Chief Architect in our field, but they don't make a Mac platform.
Oh.
So we have Chief Architect.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah.
How about a book? Do you have a favorite book you want to recommend?
So I'm more of a magazine guy. I read the Remodeler, Builder, Find Home Building, and Dwell. I do read. We have Contractor Marketing Simplified, of course. And that's, we do read through that. That's on our desktop. We also have Market and Profit: A Contractor's Guide that we read, which is pretty good. And then Julie is a huge fan of Sean Van Dyke, so his stuff is around, and
good.
Especially that helps a lot, because especially new for a lot of contractors out here is the push to value your time and be paid for your time and your knowledge is, for so many years, it was free estimate, free estimate, free estimate, free this, free that, free that. And you spend so much time never getting a return, to where, we do our first consultation, but then after that we have levels of engagement, and you pay per that engagement. And to where, like, if we, go through and do a proposal or something, at least we're covered for our time. We're going to give you a well-detailed proposal, but, we have to pay for the time too, because we want to be that accurate. I mean, if you just want to estimate, I could just give you a $10,000 window off the top of my head and be pretty close, or $50,000 window, right, or $100,000 window. But if you want something accurate, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to give you something detailed with what product, how much, everything, but you have to pay for that. And it's a win-win for them too, because then basically your scope of work and everything is done beforehand and clear.
Eddie, it's been awesome to have you on the show today. I've looked forward to this for a long time. Where can we follow you online?
So we have our website, 111ltd.com, and then we're also, I think we mostly do Instagram. So if 111ltd on Instagram, we do, and we have a house account, which we put all our stuff up there, but our biggest engagement seems to be Instagram. Well, we do have Facebook and that, but that doesn't, we don't get a lot from there.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun, and Just a pleasure for sure.
Protractors, I just want to encourage you to go and follow 111 LTD on Instagram. Check out their website. But I want you to know that I really do want to raise the bar in this industry, and I hope that you've been inspired and encouraged by listening to Eddie's story today. I was particularly impressed with the idea of designing a structure around what could come and what, not just what their living condition is right now, but even thinking ahead in the near future. So definitely keep that in mind. But I want to end with this one thought, and that is to, no matter where you're at in your business and in your trade or your profession, don't just look at your immediate thing, but think of the next thing coming and the next thing, the other contractors or the other people involved around you and how that all fits together so that you can be a part of the entire success or the success of the entire project. So I'm Martin Holsinger, and I want you to know I'm behind you all the way. I want to encourage you in your business and help you in any way that's possible. If you haven't read my book yet, Contractor Marketing Simplified, and you want to learn how to build your online presence in a way that will attract the right customers to you, then you can get a free copy of my book at contractormarketingsimplified.com. I just ask that you help me with the shipping and handling. And then go to protractorpodcast.com and look up our blog. We have articles on there. We have some resources. Go back through some old episodes. And most of all, I just want you to be inspired and motivated and educated to be a professional contractor going into your community each day with a desire to make a difference. So that's all for today, and we'll see you right back here in the next episode of the Protractor Podcast.